Senator Warnock, welcome to Meet the Press, sir.
Thank you so much. Great to be here with you, Chuck.
I appreciate it. I want to start with something that the FBI director said this week. Director Wray said it does not appear the shooting was racially motivated. So this is now the FBI director. We've heard local law enforcement. What are you hearing the same thing from law enforcement that you've been speaking with?
Well, first of all, let me say that our hearts go out to these families as they are dealing with unspeakable loss. I think it's important that we center the humanity of the victims. I'm hearing a lot about the shooter, but these precious lives that have been lost, they are attached to families. They're connected to people who love them, and so we need to keep that in mind. I know that, look, law enforcement will go through the work that they need to do, but we all know hate when we see it. And it is tragic that we've been visited with this kind of violence yet again, and I'm going to be doing everything in my power as a United States Senator to make sure that families don't have to endure this kind of violence in the first place.
Is there a necessary legislative response here? Is this President Biden said, look, we got to change our heart. And there's no doubt there's a morality aspect to this. But is there a legislative change you'd like to see make? Is it reporting in hate crimes, gun reform, police reform?
Well, I've long pushed for hate crimes laws here in the state of Georgia. It took entirely too long to get one on the books here. But thankfully, we do have that law on the books right now. In addition to that, we need reasonable gun reform in our country. This shooter was able to kill all of these folks the same day he purchased a firearm. But right now, what is our legislature doing? They're busy under the Gold Dome here in Georgia, trying to prevent people from being able to vote the same day they register. I think that suggests a distortion in values. When you can buy a gun and create this much carnage and violence on the same day, but if you want to exercise your right to vote as an American citizen, the same legislature that should be focused on this is busy erecting barriers to that constitutional right.
Do you think if you were not a U.S. Senator right now, these changes would be going through the Georgia legislature?
Well, look, I can tell you this, that the people of Georgia stood up in a powerful way, and they sent the first African-American senator and the first Jewish senator to the United States Senate. And when they did that, that was revolutionary, not just for Georgia, but in a real sense, they saved the country. We would not have passed the American Rescue Plan had I not been elected. And I think it's unfortunate that some politicians have looked at the results, and rather than changing their message, they're busy trying to change the rules. It will not stand, which is why I'm pushing through the For the People Act, which I'm co-sponsoring, which will make it easier, not harder for people to vote. And it's the reason why we have to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. Let
me ask you specifically on that. Look, H.R. 1, and then there's the version you just said, that's a very big, comprehensive bill that frankly has a lot of, there's folks that argue even on the left side of the aisle that it maybe needs some changes. The voting rights, the updating of the Voting Rights Act, that has been something that has been fairly easy to get done in a bipartisan way in the past. Should that be the focus first?
Well, I like the fact that you point out that voting rights traditionally has been bipartisan. The last time we reauthorized the 1965 Voting Rights Act, George W. Bush was president, and it passed the United States Senate 98-0. I think the onus is on my colleagues to explain why they're not supporting voting rights. Voting rights is not just one issue alongside other issues. It is fundamental. It is foundational. It is who we say we are as an American people. It's the covenant we have with one another, one person, one vote. And so we've got to do everything we can to pass voting rights.
Is that, I understand that. What does that mean with the filibuster? You have said you'd like to see a carve-out. Have you had a conversation with Senators Manchin or Sinema about the idea of a democracy carve-out?
Oh, I'm talking to my colleagues all the time. I've been in the United States Senate a few short weeks. But Chuck, I have to tell you, I know that folks are focused on the filibuster, but this language about the filibuster is language much too puny as an appropriate frame to talk about something as vital and as precious as voting rights. We have to pass voting rights no matter what, and it's a contradiction to insist on minority rights in the Senate while refusing to stand up for minority rights in the society. As someone who served as the pastor of Congressman John Lewis, who literally laid his life on the line crossing a bridge in order to secure that right for us, I'm going to do everything in my power to convince my colleagues to support voting rights. It's the only reason why any one of us is in the Senate in the first place. Somebody voted for us. And right now, in real time, we've got 250 voter suppression bills all across our country. We cannot allow this to happen. We have to secure our democracy.
I want to ask you about the controversy regarding some comments Senator Ron Johnson made. He defended himself from these comments, saying that he wasn't afraid of the insurrectionists that were there, but he would have been if they'd been Black Lives Matter and Antifa protesters. And this is what he wrote in the Wall Street Journal defending himself. He goes, "It was also sadly predictable that liberals would hurl the accusation of racism. This isn't about race. It's about riots. The rioters who burned Kenosha weren't of any one ethnicity. They were united by their radical leftism." What would you say to him, and have you had a chance to explain to him why you believe what he said was racist?
Listen, I'm a pastor, and I'm happy to talk to my colleague. I think he's clearly misguided. But you know, Chuck, I'm one of only 3 African Americans in the United States Senate. In 2021, I'm only the 11th Black United States Senator elected in the history of our country. And so I think that part of what this underscores is that representation matters. And when you are inside of a kind of a privileged echo chamber, you can say things and not understand or the implications of what's going on. This is the reason why we've got to stand up for voting rights in our country. We've got to make sure that people from diverse backgrounds with their life experience, that they bring this to the great debates about the direction of our country. And that's why we've got to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, and we've got to pass the For the People Act.
Senator Raphael Warnock, a new Democrat from the state of Georgia, thank you for coming on and sharing your views with us. I know on most Sundays you have another job you do, so I appreciate you spending a few minutes with us.
I'm headed to church, Chuck. Great to be with you.
All right. Thank you, sir.